Before getting started on the presentation, it's working, right? Okay. So before getting started on the presentation, actually this is the first time I'm experimenting with the rollups, and on-chain games should have these four qualities by default in their nature. That is, there should be a provable gameplay, community governance should govern the game and how the game is being played by among the players. There should be immutable ownership, forkability, and mods. These are the four basic qualities that I would expect from an on-chain game to have. Especially to focus on is these last two capabilities, that is immutable ownership and forkability. I have so far not seen any particular games that have explored. Of course, there's immutable ownership on the game assets, but I have not seen ownerships across, for example, the timelines, ownership across, or maybe like the forkability is something that is unexplored so far, that how can you fork a game state and play it across shared game states, how this can be implemented. So that's what I call game folks. Game folks, if I remember it from my childhood, like basically when GTA and Grand Theft Auto games were there, people created mods of those games, people played, shared. So it was a great user experience, and all the players loved it. They created their own formats of these games, and they created these folks, and they shared the state milestone, and someone else drive the state in a different way. So that's basically game folks. There's not a single possibility, or there's not have been attempts much in this direction in terms of Web3 space on-chain gaming. Because if you want to actually do game forking, basically if you want to do the forking, there's two options. One, you do smart contract forking, or the other is the chain forking. If you go with the smart contract, you will bloat up the chain state, because you will deploy so many contracts, and there's a lot of state that is still shared, and you will at the end, but even after doing so much, you will still suffer through the same tech and the UX constraints that were existingly there, and it's also single chain. If we do consider of chain forking, then chain forking is also very complicated. It is high infra overload, and composability issues, provenance issues, and especially it requires a developer expertise. So you can't you can't do chain forking without having a developer involved. So in my opinion, if I want to create a new copy, there should not be requirement of a new dev to involve in this process. I should be able to create a new timeline for my game. So let me share you example that how this Mesh Micro-Rollups exactly work, and how does it look like with this image. So basically, this is the player one. The player one plays this game. At the genesis, the state starts with S0, and then he takes a move, and the state becomes S1, and then he takes another move, the state becomes S2. At this point, as the player 2, he thinks of that, hey, this player is doing great, but he does this S1 to S2 transition of state, which I think I would have done a different move. I would have played in a different way, and which could resulted in a different ending of the game. Or I want to explore this possibility. So it's more of an exploration of game states. So this player 2 now starts with directly from the state S1 as the genesis state, and now creates this possibility of what can be done, and creates this fork. So every initially when it started, it was a micro rollup. This green chain is a micro rollup on which this thing is happening. And the red chain which you see, which created with the state of S1, is another micro rollup that is created from its game state. So this is interlinked micro rollups from the same states. Then even from S0, someone else can again do the same process and keep extending. So basically a mesh of whole these things is being created and expanding across the internet. So basically you are creating multiple rollups as per your requirements and as per your needs. The most common the most common analogy of this would be fan fiction. Basically, you start with a fictional story, author writes a great story, and then you realize that it could be improved, it can be done something better. So people create some fan fictions that people enjoy more, the audience enjoys more, and that basically contributes to this whole ecosystem. So that's the project, and we built the infra for this, of how creating a basically this roll-up factory, pulling up new roll-ups and everything. There's a lot of advantages. It removes the state bloat issues. There's solvents for, it solves the provenance issues. You can still track back to exactly who created the first game state and how everything has been floated on the internet. And there is less infra overhead. Even as a user can create a new fork and start playing. So let's take an example. This is the infra that we built, and let's take an example of a dApp using this infra for a particular game. That is Storylock. So Storylock is basically an AI-driven game where it is a text-based RPG. It puts you in a situation, you take actions, based on that you keep going on, and your story and timeline gets created. So I'll quickly show you this game in live demo. So this is story log. Unleash your imagination, forge your storyline. So what you can do is you can just click on start game. You can connect your MetaMask or Google Auth, and then it asks you to choose a storyline. Maybe you want to play like Harry Potter, Naruto, or something else. So maybe let's try to play like Naruto. So what happens? So what happens is that it creates an initial plot and puts you in a situation.
Once upon a time in the village of Kanahagakur, there was a young ninja.
So it also narrates you these things. And then you have to take a move. You can take different moves, and this is a micro-rollup that has been started for this game, which is in every action you do is being settled on L1 from this micro-rollup. So this is the green line that I showed you earlier, and I'm taking decision, and these are my states being changed onto this onto this micro-rollup which is running. So as I take decisions, this micro-rollup gets called, and like again and again, the state keeps going on to the L1. So this is going good. I can play this game, and eventually I can generate an NFT and pause the game here in between. So I actually did it. So basically you can click and it will generate a cool image for you. So if I go on the home page, this is some other games that people played. You can see here. So let's say if you want to play this game, this is where I'm showing you how you can create a fork of this and how you can actually leverage what I'm saying mesh of this rollups. So basically, this is a game someone played. I can read it, I can enjoy it. But maybe this place he introduces itself to the other students and being very friendly. I don't want to be friendly. So what I could do is basically I can fork this, and I can choose the step where I want to fork this timeline. And from that point, a new micro rollup would be up and running, and I can create my story timeline from there. So for example, if I click here, it will create a new micro rollup, and with the state till just before that point. And here it will ask me again the same question, that how I want to drive my story now, and I can keep moving in this direction and keep building my storyline. So that's the concept of how this mesh network could leverage a very great or something what I call as unlocked game experience for the people on chain. And it is not limited to the story log in particular, this example. It can be expanded to other. For example, if you watched, So for example, if you watched a game between great chess players like Carlos or something, and Magnus Carlos, and some other player, and you're a fan of the player who lost. So you want to repeat the chess moves. So if those chess moves are being settled in a micro rollup, you can create a new micro rollup from that state and try to explore with your friends. Try to explore the new possibilities of this dimension, and can extend this infra to more games and more things that are possible with it. So that's what we are building, and I already showed you demo. This is it. There's a lot of scope of improvements, building different cult economies that if you create a fork of mine and something like that. So now open up for questions.